Is the microphone working? Yes, it is. Hello, everyone. First, before I start my presentation, I have to say thank you for for the speakers who talked before me, because I can add on and maybe go into a little bit more detail what the language program of Germany is about, and maybe what some differentiations might be helpful for an understanding. I was listening very carefully to your questions already here in the plenum, and I'm trying in this limited period of time to draw a little picture about the national program of language tuition for adult migrants. It's very important. It's adult migrants. It's nothing to do with schools. It's for adults only. Integration policy of the federal office. I'd like to make you familiar with two different columns of the national program of language tuition, and that's very important. Also, the question was raised about what about a culture? What about people arrive in a country and not knowing really what about cultural aspects? And this is very important because there was a big political discussion about, is Germany really an immigrant country or is it not? And in 2005, there was the first time that we talked about a resident act, and integration policy was officially stated. And most important for our concern, for our topic here, is that that was the first time that there was a unification of language tuition for adult migrants. Before, there was like several different stakeholders who did different things, but in this German integration policy and the new Residence Act, that was born the integration course. I show you later in an illustration what it is about and how what it is exactly. But more important is that roughly 10 years after the introduction of this integration course was the conception and the implementation of those vocational language courses and the assessments we heard about today already. And also important, because I'm representative of the political system here, is that the integration course and the vocational language courses or training is supervised by two different ministries. One is the Ministry for Interior and Community. It's migration and integration. It's legally very important, so it's the Ministry of the Interior responsible for that program. And on the other hand, because the main goal of the vocational language training is the integration in the labor market, is the Federal Ministry for Labor and Social Affairs. Administered is this program by the Federal Office for Migration and Refugees I'm working at. This is a lot of information now, but I want to show this to you because I think it might be quite important to see that the vocational language course is a follow-up program of the integration course. Why is that so important? That's so important because we have different objectives, different goals with those courses. First of all, arriving in Germany, this is only courses that you can attend in Germany, not abroad. Also very, like, since we're talking about immigration, labor, immigration, this is courses when you arrived in Germany. You go to an integration course, first of all, from like 0 level, depending, maybe you come with some language competency already, so you can start on an advanced level already in this integration course. But here you have goals like arriving in a country, how you go to consult a doctor, what's the school system like, what's the legal system like, history, culture, Europe and Germany in particular. This is the base of this national program concerning language competencies and cultural and historical and legal aspects. Once you've completed that with the outcome here under A2 or even B1, which is the overall goal for this integration course, language level B1, you can then add on into a vocational language course where, of course, then you have learning objectives that have to do with the labor market and with the work. And especially on those 4 language levels and those 4 courses, I'd like to focus on my presentation. This is so important because Olaf Behrenfinger mentioned this competence system, this Lernzielkatalog, this catalog of learning objectives, that I think is important to know in addition. This is learning objectives that are valid for any work profession. It doesn't matter if you are coming or becoming a nurse, or you're a mechanic, or you're working in the logistics, looking for a job, starting in a job, working with colleagues, communicating with colleagues, with bosses, with clients, looking for other options for trainings, and then leaving the job and moving on. This is for everyone relevant, and that's why we don't have specific professions that are dealt with in those classes, so generally work-related classes. And this is also the big challenge we had to meet, to identify those learning objectives that are relevant for everyone. Here, on the other hand, you see that we also have in our national language program classes that deal with a specific professions, especially when people arrive in Germany and they already have completed and they bring a qualification. Yeah, they only need like a language level that is specific for a work purpose. That is a big difference to that system. But because the tests for the German tests for work were developed for those classes, I'm going to focus on that. But I think it was important to tell you that we have here the technical professions and the retail professions, and we have specialists in healthcare, and here the academic part to it. That's for the recognition of foreign professional qualifications. That is 2 different things. Now I want to, I'm sorry for the layout. We have a little confusion here, but I think it's still visible. So we have the generally job-related or work-related classes. And just to give you a little idea about the amount of participants we have, I pointed out the courses and the number of participants in 2023. Overall amount of almost 9,000 classes in 1 year with more than 150,000 participants. This includes those generally work-related classes as well as the specific ones. You can see by the numbers that the numbers are hugely different than the biggest course we have, with almost 70% of all participants is the vocational language course with trying to reach the level B2, which is exactly the follow-up on the integration course, finishing with B1. This is also the reason why we have the biggest number of participants and classes, almost 70% B2, because this is the follow-up. Okay, big major goal is the integration into the labor market. We have the participants of those courses are mainly looking for a job, not having a job at the moment, or trying to get in a training or in another specific language course after they finished a certain CEFR level. Okay, now, because for those 4 courses, the German tests for work, Deutsch-Test für den Beruf, was developed only for those 4. And that's why I have the next 2 tables. We introduced those German tests for work only in July 2022, after a period of roughly 2.5 years of development for those Deutsch-Test, including the competence model Olaf Behrenfinger spoke about. And you can see that this is the number of participations. That is important, differentiating between participations and participants, because in 1 year it might be possible and was possible that there is some retakers who did not make it in the first place. So they retook the course after a time, and we had roughly 34,000 participants, and that leading to 42,000 participations. That's the actual, the latest number we have in 2023, with 92,000 test takers in 1 year. Of those 4, highest number here, matching also the participants of the classes, is again the B2 examination. Yeah, this was already mentioned by Sibylle Plasman and is one of kind of a core program or commitment of our Federal Ministry of Migration and Refugees, because we know this is very, very important. When we administer, or we have experts in my as my colleagues who deal with teachers, teacher qualification. We write the curriculums and course concepts. We help developing tests, which is done mainly by experts from outside the federal office, but we're part of that process. We talk about what about textbooks and publishers. We set up guidelines and regulations for what has to be in the textbooks according to the content, the Lernziele, the learning objectives, and of course we are in close contact with the test institutes and the language schools here. This is all going together, and all those stakeholders are very important to actually bring the participants and the learners to the test. So in 2016, I told you the language courses were introduced the first time for vocational purposes, but the language tests were only introduced in 2022. Why is that so important in concerning or looking at constructive alignment? This is so important because it was quite the opposite of a constructive alignment before. There were only course concepts written by the Federal Office for Migration and Refugees, but we could not go into detail what the learning objectives were. So basically it was about principles of teaching work-related German as a foreign language. Sorry for the abbreviations here, but yeah, German as a foreign language. And we had no mandatory qualifications. That will an issue be later on also. So people who were qualified teaching integration course until B1 were also allowed to teach in vocational language classes. We had no approval for textbooks. So this tradition, Sibylle Plasman was talking about, like I teach as I was taught when I was a student, when I was at school, how you pick up language. That was also the tradition now in the language courses for vocational purposes or for the labor market. So we saw that's not matching. Teachers kept on teaching as they used to do, and that's not really matching with the challenges you have to face when it comes to integration into the labor market. So long story short, since we have the learning objectives and the Lernziele, Olaf Behrenfinger and Sibylle Plasman was talking about, I added here a QR code. So everyone who is interested in to download this, you can just simply follow this one, and I'm very looking forward also for the English version and the French version, the Spanish version of this one. But here you'll find, thinking backwards, which is a very good idea and that I learned from Olaf Behrenfinger, is when you think about constructive alignments, it's good to follow certain steps. And if you think backwards, or to, let's say, to have a kind of a backwash effect on all the responsibilities I showed you with this illustration, with the sun in the middle and then all the stakeholders are around. It is very important to start with what are the students are going to learn? What is the outcome? What are they supposed to know language-wise and work-wise? We've seen it's very related, that you also have to know about work culture and things like that, how things work, how you communicate, what's the hierarchies in a company in Germany, how you deal with this. So starting with the learning objectives, we then published, or Talc published with us together, a test prototype, those 4 with the CEFR level, you can see here, telling everyone who was interested in, what's the test going to be? And now you know what is we're going to learn, but how is that going to be tested? So this is in here, 2020, it was published the first time. And then, that's where my heart's beating most, is the teacher qualification. No curriculum, no test is worth when there's not a teacher being fully aware where you're going with your students, what steps you have to take, what's so important, and what's so different between teaching German for cultural purposes, teaching literature, there's nice music, Sibylle Blassmann showed very famous actors, and what's the cultural life in Germany, but I want to be a mechanic. So what language do I need? How I communicate with my boss, and how with clients, and that's why a teacher qualification, an additional one, was so important. And just to give you a number, I didn't show it anywhere written, but in between 2020 and 2023, more than 9,300 teachers who already were language teachers for the integration course, had a license to do that, finished an 80 teaching units qualification to realize this catalog of learning objectives and teaching a vocational language, maybe first time in their life. Because we had those learning objectives and we know what the test is going to be like, we revisited our course concepts that were already written in 2016, but now we know where we exactly be going, so we had a revision of the course concepts, and that was so important because then we could introduce approval of the textbooks. So you see, it's all coming together. Like teachers have to be qualified, but with what materials are they teaching? With the old books, talking about Fachwerkhäuser and Marlene Dietrich? No, they also needed, and maybe some of you are teachers and they know, without material you have to invent something, but it's very limited. So we have a procedure at the Federal Office of Migration, and lists with the CER levels which textbooks by which publishing companies you allowed to use in the classes, because they represent the learning objectives and they represent basically the tasks in the tests, in the work-related tests. So this is why I'm stressing and underlining that so much, because I think this whole constructive alignment steps that was taken were necessary to introduce in the 1st and 2nd of July, I think, were the first dates of the introduction for the German tests for work. And what are the long-term goals? I think I'm running out of time a little. The long-term goals for the National Program for Language Acquisition, I told you it's supervised by 2 different ministries. Of course, they have different ideas and different regulations. So we're trying to get like a more common standard for all the stakeholders, also better to understand that, in this integration course you have to do it like this, the billing and the teaching qualification is like this, and the other program, it's different. So we try to unify it a little bit as good as possible. And those are the components that are necessary for. We call this then the National Program for Language Acquisition. Maybe there's some technical terms that are changing or not not as fixed as I like them to be, because it's all in German, and for this presentation I translated many things into English, but even in the community of testing and linguistics, translation for language teaching and acquisition for vocational purposes are quite difficult to translate sometimes. We all know the problems for translating the framework, the Common European Framework. And we are also very interested in to get better and to do scientific evaluation. And very shortly, I'd like to point out that just recently, a couple of weeks ago, the first evaluation of our vocational language courses were published. Also have the code for anyone who's interested in download. And surprise, surprise, it's in German. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's published by the Federal Ministry for Labor and Social Affairs, and the contents, that's maybe interesting because they had a closer look at the participants. So who's participating in those classes? What are their backgrounds? What are women better learners than men, for instance? Make a guess. Yes, women are better learners according to that study. They learn quicker. They reach. They pass the tests more often. And we also had an impact analysis, and of course, what does it cost, and do they really profit the participants when they take such courses, and at the end, the mandatory test exams. So who's interested in those one? It's quite a big study, took 3 years. You can look up specific details on this one. Then I hope you could enjoy a little bit, and you received some new information. Of course, I'll be very happy and delighted if there are some questions now. And thank you for your attention.